New Judge Lin Qiji. Since taking over, I haven't slept a good night. Either solving a case, or solving a case. My friend Xia Ximo knows her abilities. Invite to become a police consultant. From now on there is a small tail named Captain behind me. She was going to bed, and he had gentle eyes and gentle movements blowing her hair. She met the unrepentant murderer, who acted as the thug. Unconsciously, Lin Qichen felt something was wrong. My personal space is gone. However, she quickly adapted as well. I think this is also good. Keywords of the novel. The master of metaphysics is solving a case again without a pop-up window. The master of metaphysics is solving a case again. Download the complete TXT collection, and the master of metaphysics is solving a case again. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Purge of Injustice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Purge of Injustice. Please help me, please help me. The dimly lit room was quiet, echoing slowly, with a mechanical and stiff female voice that added a hint of strangeness. On the bed in the room, a woman is sleeping soundly. She pulled on the blanket and shrank her body, trying to cover up the annoying voice, but it didn't have much effect. The slow and eerie female voice still ran into her ears. 2:30 a.m. It was precisely when people were sleeping soundly when they were awakened by strange noises that no one would be happy. Lin Qichen frowned, slowly opened his eyes, and popped out of the blanket. I'm in a bad mood now, you better really have something to do, otherwise. Lin Qichen, who had just been woken up, had a hoarse voice. The threat from behind didn't come out, but the eerie female voice immediately stopped. After a moment, the eerie voice rang out again mechanically, but with a somewhat cautious tone, "Sir, please calm down." Lin Qichen sat up with his hands propped up beside him, comfortably leaning against the pillow behind him. His tone was lazy and casual, "You talk first." Although Lin Qiji's tone was very scary, she also felt that she had already arrived. Even if she was beaten, she had to tell the truth, otherwise it would be a blessing. The eerie female voice made up her mind and drifted up to Lin Qichen, while at the same time, a cold wind followed suit. Lin Qichen frowned and didn't say anything at the end. He raised his hand and picked up the air conditioning remote control placed by the bed, turning off the air conditioning that was blowing cold air. "Sir, I am a murderer." The woman stood by Lin Qichen's bed, emitting a cold aura. As she spoke, it seemed that the air was slowly condensing. "Oh, you're really amazing," Lin Qichen said with low interest, drooping his eyelids as if he didn't feel any changes in the air. "But I'm clearly not." The woman's emotions became a bit excited, as if the air had cooled for a while again, like a refrigeration machine. Lin Qichen couldn't bear it anymore. It was too cold. He casually raised the corner of his eye and glanced at the woman beside him, who looked like a female ghost. Slowly lifting her eyes, the woman's sudden excitement calmed down instantly, and she couldn't say a word for a moment. After about a minute, the woman's knotted tongue finally untied, and her first sentence was to apologize, "Your Excellency, I'm too excited." "You can continue to be excited," Lin Qifu tugged at the corner of his mouth, his tone casual. "No. No." The woman shook her head and denied as if she had been choked by someone. If she angered the adult in front of her, she would really go to the 18th level of hell. At the thought of the 18 levels of hell, a deep fear appeared in the woman's murky and lifeless eyes, and her body trembled slightly. Lin Qiji is the only descendant of the Lin family, who cleanses the dead from injustice and is often referred to as a judge. After death, based on your past deeds, you will decide whether you will be a human or a beast in your next life. Those who commit heinous crimes will not enter the 6 realms and will be directly imprisoned in the 18th level hell. If you really feel that you have grievances in front of you, you can ask the judge to wash away your grievances and not go to the 18th level hell to serve your sentence. And the judge who washes away injustice for others will add a merit to the record of washing away injustice. 3 months ago, Lin Qiu's only relative, her grandfather, passed away. Before she could grieve, she was forced to inherit the position of judge. From then on, she never had a good sleep. Let me explain the situation. Lin Qichen leaned against the blanket, yawned, and his tone was casual. Adults, it's like this. I'm just a part-time worker. I met my husband half a year ago, and we got married in less than a month. We also had a good life after marriage. The woman recalled the days before her death, and the mechanical and eerie voice suddenly became a bit soft. It seems that the married life was indeed comfortable and satisfactory. I don't know what's going on, my husband was suddenly killed, and... The woman's emotions became excited at this moment, her voice like the sound of fingernails scratching metal, piercing and sharp, but because of Lin Qichen, she pressed down hard. When someone dismembered me at home, I became the only suspect. While evading pursuit, I accidentally died. Sir, please wash away my injustice. The woman knelt on one knee on the ground, her mechanical and eerie voice revealing seriousness. At this moment, Lin Qichen felt a little impatient in his heart. He slept soundly, but was awakened by someone. He was forced to listen to a story and had to do something for her. Not happy. I'm really unhappy. The woman knelt on the ground and didn't hear any answer. She couldn't help but lift her head slightly, only to find that there was no expression on Lin Qichen's face, but a curve curved at the corner of her mouth. I don't know why, but looking at Lin Qichen like this, the woman suddenly felt a surge of hair in her heart. Her weightless body was wrinkled into a ball, and she didn't dare to make any noise, afraid that one mistake would anger Lin Qichen. If she refused directly, she would have gone to 10 or 8 layers of hell. As a judge, one can wash away the injustices of the deceased and prevent those who commit heinous crimes from entering the 18 layers of hell. Without protective measures, such an ability is the greatest Tang monk's flesh. So, only with the consent of the judge can the injustice of the deceased be washed away, and they can avoid entering the 18 levels of hell. The woman's body trembled slightly, and in the quiet air, she even had an impulse to block her ears, so she couldn't hear rejection. The woman actually knows in her heart that the charge of her murderer is almost settled, and everyone thinks she is the murderer. The room was quiet, as if even his breath had been amplified, and Lin Qichen did not speak. The woman began to gradually waver. Although the 18 layers of hell were very scary, the woman in front of her seemed to be also very scary, especially now, even though there was no smile, she looked like she was curling her lips. Just as she was almost unable to bear it, Lin Qiji, sitting on the bed without bones, suddenly lay down whole and was about to fall asleep. Seems to be a silent refusal. The woman was somewhat unwilling and moved her lips, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Just as she was about to drift out, Lin Qichen, who seemed to have fallen asleep on the bed, spoke up and said, I accept this injustice. The woman almost couldn't control her emotions and wanted to drift past to give Lin Qichen a big hug, but in the end, she didn't dare to do anything and could only cover her mouth, trying to suppress her excitement. She knelt down to Lin Qichen in bed. Thank you, sir. Then happily drifted away. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Consultant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Consultant. The next day when Lin Qichen woke up, it was already noon. She closed her eyes and walked slowly into the bathroom. After washing her face and teeth, she opened her eyes and looked at herself in the mirror. The girl in the mirror has a small face as big as a palm, fair and delicate skin, almost glowing with a hint of whiteness. Her eyes are even more vivid, but deep down there is a hint of indifference and coldness, making her temperament even more outstanding. After taking a glance, Lin Qichen withdrew his gaze, picked up the towel next to him, and casually wiped it. After playing the game for a while, she finally remembered that she had probably received a case of murder. She opened her phone, entered yesterday's situation, and immediately appeared. The woman cruelly killed her husband. Is it a distortion of human nature? This topic has also topped the hot search list. and many people are paying attention to this case. The comments below are even more diverse. It was that woman who killed her husband, otherwise why would she feel guilty and run away, damn it. In the end, she ran onto the road and was hit and killed by a car. How unfair that driver is. Yes, this kind of woman is truly worthy of death. If she dies, she will have to carry someone on her back. This type of comment accounts for the majority, while a few feel that the police have not yet provided an answer, so they cannot just say that they were quickly overwhelmed and did not even stir up a ripple. In about half an hour, Lin Qichen went through all the public information about this case, and almost everyone felt that there was no doubt that the murderer was his wife. The suspect of the murderer's name is Lin Jia. He grew up in the countryside and started working at the age of 18. He gave money to his family every month, but his life was not very good. Until they met her husband Li Meng, the two quickly got married. According to Lin Jia yesterday, life was very warm and happy. Lin Qichen had just put down her phone when the incoming call rang. It was her friend who came to invite her out for dinner. After the two agreed, Lin Qichen went to take a shower. 6:30 p.m. After Lin Qichen arrived at the location, he went straight in. The fruits were already served in the private room, playing games while waiting for his friends to come over. About 10 minutes later, the door of the private room was opened from outside, and a delicate-looking but quite heroic woman walked in with her bag on her arm and long legs. She pulled up a stool with one hand and casually placed her bag on top. "Qichen, have you ordered yet?" "I'm starving to death," she said. Lin Qichen's attention remained on his phone, and he casually replied, "I ordered it, it's still the same. You can't get tired of it either." The heroic woman nodded and spoke casually, "Of course I'm not tired of it, I just like the dishes from this restaurant." From the casual tone of the two, it was evident that they were extremely familiar. After the game ended, Lin Qifu finally focused on the heroic woman and said, "You have nothing to show off, Miss Xia. You're not someone who has time to treat people to meals. Do you have something to do with me?" The captain of the Criminal Investigation Detachment of Xia Ximo City Public Security Bureau was so busy all day that he didn't even have time to eat, but he specifically came to find Lin Qichen. Upon careful consideration, he knew something was going on. Xia Ximo raised her heroic eyebrows slightly and gave a mysterious smile to Lin Qichen. "I'm really flattered by how much you know me," she said. "Let's talk about something." Lin Qichen tugged at the corner of his mouth, without a smile. Xia Ximo also knew her friend's temper and didn't like people talking too much. She pulled up the chair and approached Lin Qichen, lowering her voice. "Do you know about the recent online hustle and bustle of murder cases?" "I know." Lin Qichen tapped his finger on the phone screen and answered in a lazy and casual tone, without any gossiping emotions. "Recently, there has been a lot of pressure in the criminal investigation team, and all the evidence points to his wife Lin Jia. However, our new team leader feels that something is not right." Speaking of this, Xia Ximo stopped. Her fox eyes narrowed slightly and her voice was very soft. "Lin Qichen, would you like to come over and be our consultant?" Xia Ximo's voice was not loud, but because there were only two people in the private room, it was very quiet, so Lin Qiji could hear it very clearly. Her lips curved slightly, almost gentle, and she said, "Miss Xia, are you serious?" Lin Qichen graduated from Public Security University and was an outstanding graduate at that time. Even Xia Ximo, who is now young and promising, cannot match her in terms of investigation. For some unknown reason, she ultimately did not enter the system. In Lin Qichen's eyes, there seemed to be some laziness, but no one could see what was deep inside. Xia Ximo didn't have any smile on her face and looked very serious. She didn't answer Lin Qichen's question, but asked again. Her voice was very slow, so she appeared very serious. "Lin Qichen, would you like to come and be our consultant?" Lin Qichen's eyes scanned Xia Ximo's serious face. After a moment of silence, she spoke lazily and casually, "Sure." Finally, Xia Ximo didn't finish her meal properly and was called away by an emergency phone. Before leaving, she stood at the door of the private room with a small bag on her arm and said, "Qichen, you come to work tomorrow, I'll leave today." Then he left in a lively manner. After finishing her meal alone, Lin Qichen did not go home directly, but went to the transfer station where she communicated with the underworld. The transfer station is a courier store, and the store manager is a cute and adorable girl who is squatting in front of a bunch of deliveries, scanning and categorizing. When she comes over, she immediately shows a big smile, and a pair of dimples appear on her cheeks, which is very cute. "Sir, you go ahead and sit down. I'll come over after packing up. There are drinks in the refrigerator, so drink whatever you want for free." The cute girl didn't stand up and said directly to the refrigerator in the express delivery. Lin Qichen nodded, didn't say a word, and walked straight in. Lin Qichen had been to this transfer station a few times, so she found a place to sit down and collapsed, as if she had no bones. After the cute girl shop manager came in, she saw Lin Qichen sitting in a less elegant posture. Due to her outstanding temperament and attractive appearance, she had a casual and elegant demeanor. The cute girl's name is Li Meng. Li Meng's big watery eyes flickered slightly twice. "Mr. Lin, you're too handsome." "Sir, what's up?" Li Meng didn't care and asked directly. "I have received a grievance. Xia Ximo invited me to join the system today and serve as their advisor. The two cases are the same." Lin Qichen said expressionlessly. After a moment of silence, Li Meng said, "Okay," and pretended to pat the dust on her hands. "I will report this matter to the higher-ups." Lin Qichen narrowed his eyes slightly and suddenly spoke, "You're feeling guilty." Li Meng chuckled twice and said, "No, I'm feeling guilty. It's very suspicious." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Cui Ju and his person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Cui Ju and his person. Lin Qiji and Xia Ximo agreed to meet at the entrance of the municipal bureau. Xia Ximo walked out from inside, with a spirited expression on her face, but it was also evident that she had not rested well yesterday. Xia Ximo was dressed in work clothes, with a heroic demeanor in every gesture and gesture. "Qichen, you've come over, and now there's still time. I'll take you to familiarize yourself." As she spoke, Xia Ximo lowered her head and glanced at her watch, feeling that it was still early. Lin Qichen's indifferent eyes cast a glance at Xia Ximo and nodded. The city bureau has been very popular recently, because Xia Ximo is here and has solved several major cases, so the leaders are taking good care of them. There are tea leaves next to the automatic water dispenser. After all, the city bureau has been around for a long time, and the decoration style is quite old-fashioned. Walking through a two-step corridor, a few police officers wearing casual clothes sit face to face, separated by a net in the middle. After seeing her come in, she didn't pay much attention and continued to be busy with her current work. One of the police officers paused in his lowered head and glanced at Lin Qiji again. As a police officer, especially a criminal police officer, his memory goes without saying. In less than 2 seconds, he found Lin Qiji from his memory. 5 years ago, an outstanding graduate, for some unknown reason, did not enter the system in the end. The specific reason is unknown. He graduated 2 years later and often hears his teacher mention Lin Qiji, with a tone full of regret. Lin Qichen seemed to have noticed something and glanced casually over here. His expression remained unchanged, still lazy and casual. As a criminal police officer, most people carry a heroic aura, making it clear at a glance that it is not easy to provoke. When apprehending criminals, they also carry a deterrent force. Lin Qichen, however, was lazy and casual, with every move and gesture being indifferent, making it impossible to immediately associate her with being an outstanding graduate of that year. Su Xian lowered his head with a facial expression. Treat it as not knowing. Qi Fan, your workplace is inside, I'll take you over and take a look. Xia Ximo naturally took in the expression of her subordinates, but didn't say anything, and her expression remained unchanged. Xia Ximo didn't expect that Lin Qichen would be recognized on the first day he came over, but it wasn't a big deal. Okay, Lin Qichen said. Xia Ximo opened a room door and raised her chin towards Lin Qiji, gesturing for her to enter and take a look. Then, Xia Ximo took a step back. Lin Qichen walked slowly and stopped at the door, not directly entering. The room has been cleaned by someone and looks very clean. Next to the desk is a sofa, as if it has just been bought. Xia Ximo noticed Lin Qiji, and her gaze lingered on the sofa for the longest time. She couldn't help but feel relieved in her heart, as it seemed that the sofa was worth buying. At least, Lin Qiji will not propose to quit due to the bad environment. She can also be considered as the city bureau, retaining talents. What is Lin Qichen's ability? Others know it, but she doesn't. It's not in vain that she said good things to Lin Qichen in front of the team captain yesterday, both soft and hard. Miss Xia, come to your office. I want to understand the case as soon as possible, Lin Qifu said without changing her expression as she did not enter her office. Xia Ximo is naturally happy. However, Qi Su, this case is very simple, so there was no discovery. It was almost done by his wife Lin Jia, except for the body that needs to be fixed now. Because the data is all negative, the suspicion is based on Xia Ximo's oral statement. Li Meng was killed in his own room, and the walls were covered in splattered blood. The white walls had already been dyed red, and the original color could not be seen. In the underground waterway, deoxyribonucleic acid belonging to Li Meng was detected, as well as his teeth, indicating that he was dismembered at home. After listening, Lin Qichen leaned back in his chair, looking lazy and casual, and asked a question, "Is there blood on the wall?" Xia Ximo sat opposite her, nodding solemnly. "Yes, the new child. I've never seen such a scene before. I vomited for 2 days and now I've recovered." The child mentioned by Xia Ximo was a probationary criminal police officer assigned to him. Seeing such a scene for the first time, he couldn't help but vomit. After Lin Qichen finished asking, he fell silent. Xia Ximo was not in a hurry, so he waited quietly for about 10 minutes. Lin Qichen spoke lazily and casually again, "What's the problem with your visit?" Speaking of the visit, Xia Ximo's expression became even more serious, and her eyes narrowed slightly. They have a neighbor who is more concerned about things between neighbors and is enthusiastic about gossip. According to her, the young couple has been concerned and nervous lately. They have seen Li Meng sleeping in the hallway several times and have been kicked out by his wife Lin Jia. "Hurry out." Lin Qichen's voice was very light, as if talking to himself. However, Xia Ximo heard it and nodded silently. At this point, the case could almost be closed, but there was always a feeling that something was wrong. Xia Ximo was just an intuition, and a specific reason could not be explained. It was not until the new team leader also raised questions that she made up her mind to let Lin Qichen come over as an advisor. "I need to go to the scene." "Okay, I'll arrange it." Before she could finish speaking, there were 3 regular knocking sounds outside. Xia Ximo straightened up and thought she was a subordinate. She came to report on any work. The next second, the closed door was opened from outside, and a tall and thin man walked in with long legs, his eyes clear as if he could see through the heart, with sharp edges. When Xia Ximo first saw him, she had some doubts about him in her heart. Does such a young person really have the ability to be a captain? She thought to herself, but stood up with a delicate and heroic face, wearing a perfectly polite smile. "Captain, why are you here?" "It's almost time for the meeting," she said. Potential meaning, if you have something to do, you said it's not possible at the meeting and came over specifically. Cui Ju didn't answer Xia Ximo's question and walked up to Lin Qichen with a calm expression. "Are you Lin Qichen?" Cui Ju's voice was low but not deep, even somewhat pleasant, but exuded a dangerous aura. Lin Qichen's expression remained unchanged, very lazy and indifferent, yes. Cui Ju is about 30 years old, with a tall and deep nose bridge. Her clear and bright eyes give off an indescribable depth, reminiscent of the sea. Lin Qichen frowned inwardly. Captain Xia Ximo looked young, but it was not easy to fool him at all. No wonder he had reached this position at his age. Cui Ju reached out and said, "Cui Ju." Lin Qichen lowered his head and glanced at Cui Ju. The shirt on her wrist was slightly rolled up a few times, looking very powerful, but without any exaggerated feeling, and the lines were also very smooth. Exercise regularly. Lin Qichen didn't stand up and extended his fair and slender palm, tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Nice to meet you," he said. Xia Ximo beside her said, "I feel something is wrong." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Scene of the case. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Scene of the case. 4 eyes facing each other. The situation is evenly matched. Xia Ximo's eyes flashed with curiosity, but it quickly disappeared. Her expression remained unchanged as she looked at her immediate supervisor Cui Ju and said, "Captain, this is what I told you about Lin Qichen. Come and be our consultant. She wants to go out on the scene." Cui Ju withdrew her hand and looked at Xia Ximo with a pair of incredibly deep eyes. "Okay, I'll take her over," she said. Xia Ximo spoke up, "What about the meeting later? You are the host." "Okay." Xia Ximo has no objections. Before leaving, Xia Ximo glanced at Lin Qichen with a corner of her eye. She sat quietly in the chair, her eyes slightly lowered, not knowing what she was thinking, as if she was a bit stunned. Xia Ximo's movements paused slightly. She hasn't seen such a Lin Qiji for a long time. The clear and transparent fundus of the eyes flashed a look of nostalgia, and the corners of the mouth couldn't help but curl up a joyful curve. The expression also looked very joyful. Cui Ju glanced at the lazy and casual woman, her voice light but not heavy, and said, "Let's go." Lin Qichen stood up slowly, his lazy and indifferent eyes fixed on Cui Ju for a moment, without speaking for a moment, unsure of what was on his mind. If someone were to be stared at by such a pair of eyes, they might feel uneasy, but Cui Ju's expression remained unchanged and her eyelids didn't blink. "What's wrong? You're too handsome." Lin Qichen's face remained expressionless. Cui Ju felt a little smirk in her heart. Is this praising him? Judging from his expression, it seems like he's being hurt. The scene was far from the city bureau. Cui Ju walked out of the door and said to the lazy woman beside her, "Wait here, I'll go drive." Lin Qichen nodded. The two people in the car remained silent. From the state of driving, it can be seen that Cui Ju is an experienced driver, holding the steering wheel with one hand and casually placing the other hand. The white shirt with neat buttons and no creases wrapped around his strong and upright body, giving him a casual and handsome feeling. "What do you think?" Cui Ju grabbed the steering wheel with one hand, stepped on the brake, and the car slowly stopped, speaking casually. "It's strange." Lin Qichen looked at the scenery outside the car window, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he slowly uttered 3 words. "For example." Cui Ju continued to inquire. The scene was discovered too quickly. Li Meng had just died the day before yesterday, and the next day, someone discovered the scene. Moreover, it was too coincidental that Lin Jia happened to return to his hometown. As he spoke, Lin Qichen turned his head and looked at Cui Ju driving with calm eyes. He asked word by word, "Isn't this all too coincidental? The red light ahead has turned into a green light." Cui Ju stepped on the accelerator and chuckled lightly, "Is there anything wrong with coincidence? It's too coincidental, it's not right." Lin Qifu averted his gaze from Cui Ju's face and said casually. Cui Ju didn't speak again. The car slowly stopped at the entrance of the community, and Lin Qichen glanced outside. The surrounding environment looked very noisy. At the entrance of the community is a restaurant and supermarket, bustling with people and a strong atmosphere of fireworks. In such a bustling city, it's definitely worth wasting time, Lin Qichen said calmly as he looked out the car window. Beautiful things are always worth guarding, Cui Ju smiled lightly, her expression unchanged. Is that right? Lin Qichen asked in a casual tone. Although her tone was casual and didn't seem to have any emotional fluctuations, Cui Ju noticed a faint mockery inside and felt a bit amused, but there was no expression on her face. The community is quite old and there is no elevator. The site is on the 10th floor, so we can only climb up the stairs step by step. A person was left inside the scene to prevent anyone from damaging the evidence. When they came up, their first sentence was, "If I had known you would come over, I would have asked you to bring a meal, and I would have climbed the stairs back and forth later." The tone is very gloomy. Cui Ju didn't have any special expression. She tugged at the corner of her mouth and chuckled softly, "I don't even want to climb the stairs. You go eat first, I'm here, and I won't be able to leave for a while." The person's face immediately lit up with joy upon hearing this. He was really hungry and said, "Then I'll go eat first and come back soon." "What are you doing?" Lin Qichen stood behind Cui Ju, glanced at the police officer happily descending the stairs, and asked calmly. "Let the people on site go down, she doesn't believe that Cui Ju is just kind-hearted." Cui Ju nodded slightly and said in a calm tone, "We will not only have to take a look at the scene later, but also ask the neighbors around us again." Lin Qichen didn't express any opinions and walked slowly past him towards the room where the crime occurred. Cui Ju followed behind her with a calm and indifferent expression. Lin Qichen stopped at the door and glanced inside. The smell of blood in the room was still severe, and the red bloodstains on the white wall had already invaded. The weather in May has not yet fully warmed up, and although the bloody smell is strong, it has not reached an unbearable level. Lin Qichen didn't go in directly, but took out disposable shoe covers, gloves, and headgear from his pocket and put them on one by one. Cui Ju remained silent for a moment, then took a step forward and spread out a hand on Lin Qichen's face. His expression remained unchanged, without any hint of embarrassment. He was quite reasonable and said, "Give me a share." Lin Qichen carefully hid his hair in the hood, looking at the broad and powerful palms in front of him, and finally handed the extra portion to Cui Ju. "This one is prepared for Xia Ximo." After getting ready, Lin Qichen shifted his gaze to the room. There were no signs of anyone moving the decorations inside, except for the bloody red color on the white wall. It was basically the scene of a homicide. Lin Qichen took a deep breath and tightened his disposable rubber gloves before slowly walking in. This scene seems a bit too tidy, Lin Qichen thought to himself after glancing at it for a moment. All the large objects on the sofa and coffee table, with almost no traces of movement, remained quietly in their position. After taking a few turns in the living room, Lin Qichen stopped and stood in place, slightly drooping his eyelids. He didn't know what he was thinking, and his expression was somewhat bewildered. He withdrew his wandering thoughts and walked towards the so-called dismemberment scene. The kitchen. Lin Qichen reached out and pushed open the kitchen door. Inside, everything was equally clean and tidy, except for the noticeable red stains in the sink. Cui Ju. Lin Qichen stood in the middle of the kitchen, his voice lazy and casual, calling out Cui Ju's name. The next second, Cui Ju arrived at the kitchen door and glanced at the woman standing in the middle, her voice low but not deep. "What's wrong? Do you think it's possible that Li Mengzhen never died?" Lin Qichen turned his head and glanced at Cui Ju, asking softly. End of this chapter. What is your opinion on Chapter 5? You are listening at novelfull.audio. What is your opinion on Chapter 5? Lin Qichen's lazy and casual voice made Cui Ju's eyes slightly squint. Li Mengzhen was not dead at all. Not dead. Cui Ju did not answer Lin Qiji's question, but muttered 3 words to herself. There was still a strong smell of blood floating in the room, and Cui Ju looked up again. The slightly blackened red on the white wall was still so glaring. What basis do you have? Cui Ju's wandering thoughts slightly regained consciousness and looked towards Lin Qichen. Their eyes collided, and he stared at Lin Qichen for a moment. Lin Qichen tightened his rubber gloves and walked out of the kitchen, pointing to the white wall covered in red blood. His voice lazily and casually said, "Although the blood here looks scary, it hasn't reached the lethal level. It's estimated to be about 800 cubic centimeters of blood." Cui Ju became interested and her eyes narrowed slightly. There was no bleeding volume that reached the level of 1-time shock. Lin Qichen glanced at Cui Ju, his tone paused, and before he could ask, he continued on. "And don't you think this crime scene is too clean? If it's just a crime scene, it's not a big deal to be clean, but it's not just a crime scene, it's also a murder and dismemberment scene." Lin Qichen crossed his hands, tightened his rubber gloves, and with his hands behind his back, his lazy and casual demeanor suddenly became somewhat serious. "So, do you think Li Meng hasn't died?" Cui Ju smiled and looked at Lin Qichen's fair and petite face, her voice light and peaceful as she asked. "Yes." Lin Qichen's lazy and indifferent eyes stared at the white wall, his expression unchanged, and he casually uttered a word. "Everything you say is just speculation, with no evidence to support your idea." After a few seconds of silence, Cui Ju's mouth curved and slowly opened. "Without a body, it's evidence. Lin Qichen has a serious face. Is that right?" Cui Ju asked in a faint tone, seemingly not believing in Lin Qichen's inference. After looking at him, Lin Qichen calmly added, "Perhaps there will be any new clues in the neighbor's testimony." Cui Ju walked out first, bent her slender fingers, knocked on the door of the opposite room 3 times, then stopped and waited for the people inside to come out and open the door. About 10 seconds later, the door was opened from inside and an old man appeared at the door. Before they could speak, he said, "Police officer, come and ask questions again. Come in quickly." It is obvious that this old man has already been questioned by the police about his experience. He led them into the house and sat on the sofa without hesitation, with a warm and hospitable tone. "Police comrades, you also sit down. If you have any questions, feel free to ask and speak without hesitation." Lin Qifu's gaze slowly moved, and the neighbor's living room looked very retro. The bright red floor, red tables and chairs. "Lu Yuelian, when did you realize that there was something wrong with their husband and wife?" Cui Ju spread out the inquiry record in her hand, with a calm expression on her face, looking quite serious and serious. "About 3 months ago, while I was sleeping, I heard a loud bang in the hallway. The elderly person was already sleeping lightly, so I put on my clothes and walked out to see Li Meng sitting in the hallway. 3 months ago, after hearing the sound, Lu Yuelian walked out in her clothes. The voice control lights in the hallway had already lit up due to the loud noise. She glanced at them and found that there was no one around. Just as she was about to close the door and go back, she heard subtle movements. After all, it was night and the lights in the hallway were dim. She hesitated and wanted to close the door and go back. At this moment, a cautious boy came over and said, "Aunt Lu." Upon hearing this sound, Lu Yuelian immediately reacted and stopped closing the door. She tentatively exclaimed, "Xiao Li." The corridor was quiet for a moment, and no one answered. Lu Yuelian thought she had heard the wrong thing and tentatively called out in the direction of the corridor, "Xiao Li." After about a few seconds, a reply echoed back and forth in the hallway, "It's me, Aunt Lu." Lu Yuelian breathed a sigh of relief and tightened her tight-fitting clothes. With the dim light of the voice control light, she walked over and saw Li Qichen sitting alone in the hallway. Her tone couldn't help but blame her, "It's so late, you're not sleeping at home. Why are you sitting in the hallway?" Li Qichen was holding his knees and burying his head in his legs. Lu Yuelian walked over, but he didn't move and still maintained that position. His voice was a bit muffled. "It's okay, Aunt Lu. I just can't sleep. Come and sit down." Lu Yuelian felt a doubt in her heart. Sitting next to Li Sheng, taking advantage of the situation, after a few glances, he suddenly spoke up, "Shaoli, did your husband and wife have a quarrel?" No wonder she asked so. In the dimly lit corridor, the voice control lights emitted a faint light. Lu Yuelian could clearly see that there were several obvious bloodstains hanging on Li Sheng's arms and red marks on his ears. After a while, Li Sheng lifted his head and looked at Lu Yuelian sitting next to him, her face full of concern. He exclaimed, "No, I just can't sleep. Come and sit down." In the eyes of Lu Yuelian at that time, Li Sheng was unwilling to admit that he had been beaten by Lin Jia for the sake of face, and she also understood that it was not easy to get involved in family affairs. She sighed inwardly and asked with concern, "Where did the wound on your body come from?" It seemed unexpected that Lu Yuelian had noticed the wound on her body. Li Meng was momentarily stunned, and then he tugged at the corner of his mouth and gave a dry laugh. "This is. I accidentally fell." In order to deepen the credibility of his words, Li Sheng nodded and repeated, "I accidentally fell." Lu Yuelian shook her head and sighed helplessly. In the end, she didn't say anything. The air was wrapped in a chill, and she tightened her clothes. "Okay, if you say you fell, Aunt Lu will believe it. She won't ask any more questions. You should go back first and don't catch a cold again." "Hey, Aunt Lu, I'll go back right away," Li Sheng responded. "That's how things are." Li Yuelian sat on the sofa, looking quite sad. In her eyes, Li Sheng was indeed a good young man who knew how to make money and also knew that he loved his wife, but his fate was not good. Cui Ju didn't make any evaluation of Li Sheng. She put away the notebook in her hand, and her expression remained unchanged. "Thank you for your cooperation," she said, "Comrade police officer, this statement goes beyond words. If you have any questions, I need to answer them. Just come over." Cui Ju nodded. After leaving Lu Yuelian's house, the two stood silently in the corridor. Cui Ju, holding a notebook in one hand, calmly asked, "What do you think?" Lin Qichen relaxed his body and asked in a faint tone, "What do you think?" Cui Ju said, "Is this question a balloon?" End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Hamburg Restaurant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Hamburg Restaurant. Cui Ju reluctantly spoke up and said, "As you said, everything is too coincidental. There happens to be a witness in the case of Li Sheng and Lin Jia." Lin Qichen nodded and looked at Cui Ju, saying, "It seems that we need to investigate carefully. This innocent and tragic Li Sheng has died." Even during the day, the hallway was a bit dim, and Cui Ju's eyelids hung slightly. The long and naturally curled eyelashes reflected shallow light. Seemingly noticing Lin Qichen's gaze, Cui Ju's eyelashes twitched slightly and looked towards Lin Qichen. I don't know why, but Lin Qichen calmly averted his gaze. "Well, since everything started 3 months ago, let's start investigating from 3 months ago." Cui Ju didn't seem to notice Lin Qiji's abnormality. She lightly tapped the notebook with her right index finger and spoke calmly and steadily. Lin Qichen had no objection and nodded. Coincidentally, the police officer who was originally on the scene returned after finishing his meal, with a satisfied expression on his face after eating and drinking. "Captain, have you conducted a survey?" "All right, let's go first." The police officer nodded and continued to guard outside the cordon. After going downstairs, Cui Ju glanced at Lin Qichen walking beside her and said, "Wait here, I'll go drive." In this community, there is no dedicated parking lot. Basically, wherever there is available, it is parked there. Cui Ju searched for a long time before she had time to park. Lin Qichen stood at the entrance of the residential unit, waiting for Cui Ju to come over, while slightly lowering his eyes and looking at the black notebook that had just been stuffed into his arms. Just before Ju left, she seemed to find it inconvenient to hold the notebook. She didn't even say, "Help me take it," and handed it directly to Lin Qichen. The car slowly stopped in front of her, and the passenger window slowly lowered. Ju supported the steering wheel with one hand and looked at Lin Qichen sideways, his voice low but not deep, "Get in the car." Lin Qichen opened the car door and sat in, casually placing the black notebook on the windshield, looking calmly outside the car window. Ju quickly started the car, but the two of them didn't speak. The car was quiet, as if something was quietly changing. In the silence, Lin Qichen could clearly hear Ju's calm breathing. Her expression remained unchanged, but her fingers curled up slightly. "What are you eating?" After an unknown amount of time, Ju's low and steady voice rang out in the quiet car, asking for Lin Qiji's opinion. Lin Qichen slightly lowered his eyelids and lifted them. Outside the car window was a place to eat, and he glanced at his wrist, which happened to be lunchtime. "Whatever." Lin Qichen didn't have anything particularly to eat, and his tone was casual. Upon hearing this answer, Ju's beautiful eyebrows curved slightly upwards, as if surprised by the answer. Lin Qichen could feel the teasing in Ju's eyes, and his expression remained unchanged, with an extremely calm expression. Ju was really surprised. He thought Lin Qiji would turn around and leave. After all, it has always been like this, hasn't it? He quickly adjusted his mind, with a pair of deep eyes. After turning around, he stopped at a hamburger restaurant and said, "Then let's eat this one." Lin Qichen glanced and felt that Ju was intentional. After a few seconds of silence, she said, "Okay," reached out to unfasten her seatbelt, pushed open the car door, and walked down. As it was a restaurant, there were quite a few people at the hamburger restaurant. Lin Qichen picked a place to sit down, and Ju sat opposite her, taking out her phone and scanning the QR code to order food. During the waiting time, Lin Qichen leaned back on the chair without bones, with a lazy and casual demeanor. Very eye-catching. The guest at the nearby table, with their heads pressed together and unsure of what they were saying, seemed to be a student from a nearby university. They discussed in a self-proclaimed low voice, "Do you think they are a couple? They look really well matched." "I think so, otherwise how could they be so well matched? It's a good match, but why don't they talk? You don't understand that anymore. This is the way the two of them communicate. They have a clear understanding of each other's thoughts without speaking." They quickly stopped the topic and went on to discuss other things, while Ju on the side listened to all these conversations. It's not that he deliberately wants to listen, but rather his years of career as a criminal police officer, and his professional habits make him subconsciously pay attention to the wind and grass around him. Ju raised her eyes and glanced at the lazy woman across from her, seemingly unaware of the discussion at the table next to her. She lowered her eyelids and didn't know what she was thinking. "On the 159th, your meal is ready." The front desk staff called out to the noisy crowd. Ju stood up, walked to the front desk, brought the food over, placed it on the table, and placed it in front of Lin Qichen. Her voice was light and peaceful, "We're ready for dinner." Lin Qichen regained his senses slightly and silently ate the hamburger and chicken rolls placed in front of him. While eating, Ju's phone rang. "I received news that Li Sheng went to the hospital 3 months ago to see a doctor, and he was also misdiagnosed. I will go and see him later." After hanging up the phone, Ju suggested to Lin Qiyu. Lin Qichen looked up and ate the chicken roll at the corner of his mouth. He let out a cold and steady hum before continuing to lower his head to eat. Misdiagnosis during medical treatment. These words can easily lead to divergent thinking and associations with negative things. Looking at Lin Qiji like this, Ju wisely didn't say anything more, but silently started eating. "Dr. Zhang, do you remember why Li Sheng was misdiagnosed?" Cui Ju looked at the medical materials in her hand as she saw that the place where Li Sheng was treated was a tertiary hospital, so the historical records in the report were very complete. Dr. Zhang is not very old, about 30 years old. After thinking for a moment, he replied, "It's not a misdiagnosis. Coincidentally, there happened to be two people named Li Sheng, who are also of similar age, so he didn't notice that their information was mixed up. We only discovered this issue when he came back for a re-examination. Speaking of which, this is also our dereliction of duty." Dr. Zhang sighed slightly. Cui Ju smiled and made no comment on the issue. So coincidental. A lazy and casual voice sounded, and Dr. Zhang looked up to see a woman with outstanding appearance and a lazy and casual temperament. In theory, such a striking woman should have noticed her immediately until she took the initiative to speak out and realized her existence. Dr. Zhang's gaze towards Lin Qifu couldn't help but be taken aback. These eyes were also too calm. Yeah, it's quite a coincidence. Dr. Zhang regained his senses slightly and answered according to Lin Qiji's words. Lin Qichen placed his hands behind his back, his eyes clear and calm, and his expression remained unchanged. He glanced at Cui Ju and casually said, "It's too clever." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Guessing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Guessing. Lin Qichen pushed open the car door and saw Xia Ximo walking towards him with long legs. When he saw her, he opened his mouth first and said, "Qichen, you just said on the phone, maybe Li Sheng didn't die." "Well, I went to the scene to take a look and everything was too neat. Even though the blood on the wall was splattered, I couldn't be sure if it was a dismemberment." Lin Qichen casually closed the car door, glanced at Xia Ximo, and answered calmly. Xia Ximo stood in place, touching her chin and slightly lowering her eyelids. She didn't know what she was thinking and was slightly stunned. After a few seconds, she slightly regained consciousness and looked at Lin Qichen with a serious tone. "Your guess is very reasonable, but it requires evidence," she said. "Re-investigate Li Sheng's activity trajectory within the past 3 months, and we should be able to find evidence," Lin Qifu said lazily and casually with a slight shrug of his hands. Xia Ximo nodded and then turned to enter the city bureau to investigate Li Sheng's 3-month activity trajectory. Cui Ju doesn't know where she went. Lin Qichen did not enter the city bureau or search for Cui Ju, but walked towards the direction outside the bureau and went to the transfer station. Li Meng was sitting in the express delivery shop, the lounge chair swaying incessantly, holding a frozen Sprite in her hand, looking carefree and extremely happy. Li Meng, who seemed to have noticed something, squinted her eyes slightly and glanced towards this side. At first glance, she saw Lin Qiji, with a hint of surprise in her eyes. She quickly stood up. "Sir, why did you come over?" Li Meng put down the Sprite she was holding in her hand and walked out bouncing to greet Lin Qichen, her tone soft and cute. Previously, Lin Qichen rarely came here, and this time he only came 3 times. He came yesterday and also today. So Li Meng was a bit surprised. Lin Qifu glanced at Li Meng and spoke slowly, "How did the top respond?" Li Meng was stunned for 2 seconds, without any reaction for a moment, until Lin Qichen impatiently looked over and immediately understood. "I haven't replied yet." Lin Qichen frowned almost imperceptibly. In theory, this kind of thing should be replied to immediately. The day has passed without any movement. The so-called judge refers to a civil servant in the underworld who handles some official affairs in the underworld and cannot interfere in the mortal world. If you want to get involved in something, you have to wait for the approval of the underworld. Lin Qichen lightly tapped his fingers twice, and upon hearing the answer, his expression remained unchanged. After 2 seconds of silence, he said, "Good," and stood up to leave. Li Meng hesitated for a moment when she saw that Lin Qiji was about to leave. Finally, she moved her lips and took the initiative to say, "Sir, do you want to go eat together?" Lin Qichen took 2 steps outside and heard Li Meng's slightly nervous voice. She stopped and half turned around, speaking casually, "Okay." Upon hearing Lin Qiji agree, Li Meng breathed a sigh of relief in her heart, and her expression also became somewhat happy. Sir, wait a moment, I'll close the door first. After Li Meng finished speaking, she quickly locked the door. Lin Qichen walked slowly, with a calm and natural expression on his face. Li Meng, who was walking beside her, occasionally glanced at her but quickly withdrew his gaze. Just as Li Meng's gaze peeked over for the fourth time, Lin Qichen slightly raised his eyes, and their gaze collided. Li Meng seemed to have never expected such a situation, and was momentarily stunned. Her heart pounded for a moment, and she was so anxious that she wanted to shift her gaze away. What's wrong? Lin Qichen's face remained expressionless, his voice clear and gentle, with a hint of indifference. It's okay, it's okay. Li Meng felt her heart thump and pulled the corner of her mouth stiffly. In the underworld, judges hold an extremely high position and have great power of speech. Otherwise, they would not, nor would they have the ability, to wash away the injustice of those who commit heinous crimes. And she's just a small grassroots employee, there's no problem talking and speaking normally. If she makes a big mistake, then the thing is, when Lin Qichen came over yesterday, she thought it was just a small matter, but unexpectedly she was going to work as a consultant in the mortal world. Such a matter naturally needs to be reported to the magistrate and approved before it can be carried out. Otherwise, those who violate the regulations, even judges, will receive considerable punishment. But Li Meng clenched her fingers together and swallowed her saliva. Sir, I have lost contact with the Lord, she said. The expression on Lin Qichen's face remained unchanged, but Li Meng felt that her breath had become very cold and dangerous. This kind of Lin Qichen made her instinctively take a step back, and her expression on the face also became panicked. I don't know what's going on, but I suddenly lost contact. I was planning to wait, maybe it's because the internet is not good, but I didn't expect. Speaking of this, Li Meng stopped talking and didn't continue, but Lin Qichen understood her meaning. Are you blaming me? Lin Qichen's voice was casual, as if asking about today's weather, but it was so cold that it hit the bone. No. Little people dare not. Li Meng quickly shook her head and shook her hands vigorously in front of her chest, indicating that she really didn't think so. Find a way to contact your lord, otherwise. After staring at Li Meng for a few seconds, Lin Qifu casually averted his gaze, with a hint of danger in his tone. Yes, please give me a few days, sir. I will try my best to contact the magistrate. Li Meng ignored the threat in Lin Qiji's words and quickly nodded like a chicken pecking at it, almost raising her hand to swear. As soon as she finished speaking, a corner of her eye caught sight of Cui Ju walking towards her from afar, seemingly aimed at herself. Li Meng seemed to have noticed something too. Following Lin Qichen's direction, she saw a handsome man walking steadily towards her, his body stiffening slightly. In an instant, Li Meng almost blurted out a short word, you. Before Li Meng could speak the rest, she swallowed it forcefully. She clearly felt that Lin Qichen's slightly cold gaze lingered on her for a few seconds. Li Meng quickly lowered her head, avoiding Lin Qichen's gaze, afraid that she might see something unbelievable in her own eyes. How could Fu Jun be here? Cui Ju seemed oblivious to Li Meng's fuss, not even glancing at her. The expression on her face remained unchanged, and she stopped in front of Lin Qichen, showing a calm and natural smile. Half a month ago, for a period of time, there was no trace of Li Sheng, and in the end, only his hometown could be found. Today we're going to investigate. Lin Qichen's light gaze lingered for a second on Cui Ju's calm and natural face before moving away. Okay. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Exploration of Hometown. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Exploration of Hometown. Lin Qiji glanced at Li Meng. Do you know each other? The tone is slow and melodious. Li Meng lowered her head and dared not say a word, even shrinking her neck to reduce her presence. I don't know, how could I possibly know? Suddenly hearing Lin Qiji ask herself, Li Meng's body stiffened subconsciously, and she immediately reacted, shaking her head to deny, with a dry tone. Seeing that Li Meng refused to admit it, Lin Qichen's face remained expressionless. After staring at her for a few seconds, he calmly averted his gaze. Although Li Meng vehemently denied it, she didn't have much talent for acting and didn't dare to look up. There was also the obvious evasion but strong calm gaze in her eyes. What about deceiving ghosts? Lin Qiji didn't have the heart to ask Li Meng further. Cui Ju didn't seem to notice anything unusual about Li Meng, nor did she feel that Lin Qichen had already noticed anything, still looking indifferent. Do you know her? Lin Qichen opened the car door, fastened his seatbelt, and his lazy and indifferent eyes glanced at Cui Ju beside him, speaking slowly and leisurely. Who? Cui Ju's slender and fair fingers pulled the handbrake, and upon hearing the words, she turned her head to look at Lin Qiji. The woman's expression was lazy and casual, and he spoke calmly and naturally, lightly questioning. Li Meng, Lin Qiji looked away. The car had slowly started and entered the traffic. Cui Ju held the steering wheel with one hand and lazily leaned up. If you want me to get to know her, I don't mind much. As she spoke, Cui Ju glanced at Lin Qichen and lifted the end of her eyes slightly, looking lazy but with a hint of carelessness. Lin Qichen was not saying anything. Li Sheng's hometown is in the nearby countryside, and it takes over an hour to drive. Lin Qiji lazily leaned back, wrapped his hands around his chest, closed his eyes, and prepared to take a nap. I work hard while driving, and it's disrespectful of you to just sleep in my car like this. Holding the steering wheel with one hand, Cui Ju, who was somewhat bored, saw Lin Qichen's lazy and ready-to-sleep appearance, and his voice was calm and naturally opened. How about you also sleep? Lin Qichen didn't open his eyes, his head moved in the direction of Cui Ju, and his tone was lazy and casual. Cui Ju choked for a moment, fell silent for 2 seconds, and then spoke slowly, "Thank you, there's no need. He doesn't want to break the law yet. Peter's driving is not good." During the 1-hour drive, Lin Qichen also slept for less than an hour. Initially in the city, the road conditions were good, but later on, it was muddy and the car was bumpy, making it difficult for her to fall asleep. Slowly opening my eyes, I looked out the car window and saw a row of emerald green trees, with mottled shadows falling on the car. Just after waking up, she felt a bit lazy. After pausing for 2 seconds, she turned her face and glanced at Cui Ju, who was lazily leaning on her back. How long is there? Due to just waking up, Lin Qiji's voice was not as indifferent as usual, with a hint of hoarseness. Cui Ju glanced at the remaining time on her phone's navigation and slowly replied, "About half an hour." Speaking, he glanced up at Lin Qiji and added slowly, "You can continue to sleep." Cui Ju said so, but stepped on the gas pedal and the speed of the car increased. At the same time, the turbulence became even more severe, as if on a boat. Lin Qichen fell silent and felt the ups and downs of the car. She straightened her body, and her loose hair slid off, revealing a section of her fair and tender neck. "Why don't you fly up to the sky?" Lin Qiji endured it for a while, but ultimately couldn't resist. He gave Cui Ju a faint glance and spoke sarcastically in a slow and leisurely tone. Cui Ju paused for a moment, and his emotionless voice rang out, "Not like Miss Lin, why don't you fly and I'll take a look, observe and learn." Lin Qichen didn't speak up to fight back, as if he hadn't heard anything. He shrunk his slender and fair neck and silently leaned against the car window. Lin Qichen was very thin and silently huddled by the car window. Even though her face was expressionless, she felt a sense of grievance. Cui Ju looked like this for a few seconds, with a hint of inexplicable emotion flashing in her eyes. She calmly withdrew her gaze and finally slowed down the speed. Realizing that she had not been able to exert herself in the end, Cui Ju couldn't help but grit her teeth secretly, with no expression on her face. Half an hour passed quickly, and the two of them arrived at their destination. The car slowly stopped at the village entrance. The road in the village has not been repaired yet, and cars cannot enter at all. The two of them can only walk there, and it is already 4 p.m. in the afternoon. There is a hint of heat in the air that has not completely dissipated, slowly floating. Cui Ju closed the car door and glanced at Lin Qichen. Her tone was calm and natural, without any emotional color. She seemed to just casually ask, "Did you climb it?" This village is very backward, with houses built halfway up the mountain. It can be said that if you want to enter the village, you must first climb the mountain. Cui Ju didn't know about this situation before coming, otherwise he wouldn't have specifically gone to find Lin Qichen. Lin Qifu gave Cui Ju a faint glance and slowly replied, "Climb. How could it be? I want to fly up." Half an hour ago, Cui Ju, who had just asked Lin Qichen to demonstrate how to fly Cui Ju, was laughed at in her heart. This person really doesn't suffer any losses, he has to make up for it no matter what. When Cui Ju passed by her, she glanced at the shoes worn by Lin Qichen. The shoes were sporty and the overall color was gray. It shouldn't grind out bubbles. Cui Ju thought to herself, her expression unchanged, and she walked out in the direction of the village first. Lin Qichen stood still for a few seconds, his eyelids slightly drooping, and glanced at his shoes, unsure of what he was thinking. Immediately, he stepped out of his long legs and followed behind Cui Ju. Lin Qifu's movement seemed slow, but he didn't delay anything at all. He kept a certain distance from Cui Ju, but he wouldn't be thrown away for a long time. Cui Ju stopped and placed one foot on the upper step. She turned half around and looked at Lin Qichen in a casual tone, "I probably won't be able to go back today." Lin Qichen walked up to Cui Ju, stopped and glanced at him slowly. His tone was calm and natural, without any gasps. "Oh, I know." Cui Ju stared at Lin Qichen for a few seconds and realized that she really had a nonchalant attitude. His tongue couldn't help but lick his cheek and he said expressionlessly, "There's nothing I want to say." "What are you saying?" Lin Qichen frowned. Sometimes he really couldn't understand what Cui Ju was thinking in his head. With just a casual word, he could sulk for a long time. "Ask." With a strange and gloomy tone, he said he wasn't angry, so don't ask. Lin Qichen felt that even if he was angry, he could kill himself. She is really difficult. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Anger Soars the Sky. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Anger Soars the Sky. Lin Qichen looked at Cui Ju with an innocent expression in his eyes. Cui Ju's expression remained unchanged, with no intention of answering her questions. After a calm glance, she calmly averted her gaze. "Keep moving forward without saying a word." Lin Qichen stood in place, his eyes slightly narrowed, and he looked at Cui Ju's steady and upward figure, as if thinking about something. However, her thinking time was very short. After standing still for 2 seconds, she slowly followed her long legs, still maintaining a close distance. "Here we are." After a while, Cui Ju stopped ahead and looked at the scattered rent in front of her, speaking calmly. Lin Qichen stopped beside him and scanned the village in front of him. "Go inside." Speaking, Lin Qiji led the others out first. The village is quiet, with no sound coming out, as if the air is slowly condensing, giving people a feeling of unease. Lin Qichen's expression remained unchanged, as if he had not noticed any abnormalities in the village, walking leisurely. Suddenly, she saw a person running out of it, waving their arms rapidly towards her direction. Lin Qichen's eyes narrowed slightly, and as the figure got closer, she could see clearly that it was a thin and frail old man of 50 years old. The skin on the face is yellow, but not very healthy. It is obviously formed by long-term exposure to the sun, with several deep wrinkles hanging on it. Lin Qifu turned his gaze to the frail old man, his expression unchanged, and his tone quite calm and natural. "Are you The frail old man didn't speak for a moment. He glanced at Lin Qichen, then at Cui Ju, and finally spoke up, "I am a village cadre. I heard someone came from above, and I have been waiting." The village officials speak in a strong dialect, which is difficult to understand for a while. Fortunately, neither Lin Qifu nor Cui Ju have rich expressions, otherwise they could also show the expression of the subway grandpa looking at his phone. Lin Qichen glanced calmly at the village cadre, then under the eager gaze of the other party, his expression remained unchanged and he slowly nodded. In the eyes of village officials, Lin Qichen's nod was a recognition of his own behavior, so he became even more enthusiastic. "I don't know what came to my mind, but I suddenly spoke up, I think you're tired. Do you want to take a break?" For a while. Both of them understood this time, and the village cadre spoke the words, "rest," in a very unfamiliar and stiff Mandarin. Upon hearing this, Lin Qifu and Cui Ju instinctively exchanged a glance, and they were very tacit in each other's eyes, seeing the words, "refuse." Lin Qichen turned his gaze to the village, which seemed somewhat dim due to the lack of sufficient light. "No need, take us to Li Sheng's house," he said, rejected. There was a hint of unknown emotion in the eyes of the village cadre, but it was fleeting and difficult to detect. "Ah. Okay, I'll take you over now." The village cadre didn't hesitate and quickly led the way ahead. Lin Qichen frowned. This village cadre made her feel a bit eerie, but she couldn't say exactly where it was for a moment. So, Lin Qichen leisurely followed behind him, with a pair of calm eyes, looking at the village cadres. The village cadres realized the feeling of being targeted, which was not strong but couldn't be ignored, and a hint of ferocity flashed through their cloudy eyes. "This girl. Kill her." It was the momentary change of the village cadre that made Lin Qichen, who had been paying attention to him, notice. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and her breath became dangerous and mysterious. Cui Ju seemed to be an imperceptible idiot, with slightly drooping eyelids, walking slowly beside Lin Qiji. Li Sheng's house is at the westernmost point, and the village officials are stopping in front of a dilapidated rent. Their wrinkled faces are covered with a smile, and their cloudy eyes are fixed on Lin Qiji. "This is Li Sheng's house. It's been a long time since we came back, it's collapsed," they said. Lin Qichen looked over and saw that the house had indeed collapsed, and it was completely a pile of ruins, emitting a faint sense of decay. Lin Qichen walked to the ruins, slightly bent down, squatted and reached out to touch the ground. After rubbing his fingers, he felt a sticky sensation. After knowing what this was, a hint of coldness flashed through Lin Qichen's eyes, making her breath even colder and more intense. Lin Qichen stood up slowly, the coldness in his eyes had long disappeared, and there was no expression on his face. "Do you know how many people Li Sheng found after he returned?" Lin Qichen stared at the village cadres for a few seconds before speaking in a light tone. The village cadre's face showed a hint of doubt, and then shook his head. "I don't know, why don't I go ask?" "Okay." Lin Qichen nodded. After the class leader left, Lin Qichen tugged at Cui Ju's sleeve. His movements were very casual, as if pulling on something unimportant. Cui Ju regained her senses and glanced at Lin Qichen's fingers, which were as white and slender as onions, pulling at her clothes. Unfortunately, she even shook them twice. Cui Ju didn't know what it felt like, as if someone was holding a small hammer and slowly tapping twice, causing her heart to beat irregularly. After being silent for 2 seconds, Cui Ju's gaze slowly shifted upwards and landed on Lin Qichen's small face. At this moment, she was standing in place with her eyes slightly lowered, her expression somewhat stunned, not knowing what she was thinking. Cui Ju couldn't help but feel particularly charming when she saw Lin Qichen's serious side. At this moment, Lin Qichen didn't know what was on his mind. His long and curly eyelashes trembled, and his expression changed slightly. Cui Ju naturally noticed and couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? What's the problem?" Lin Qichen didn't look at him. On his delicate and indifferent little face, his expression became somewhat solemn, almost pausing every word. Things are not right, he said. Just now she touched the dust on the ground, and the sticky feeling on her hands made her realize something, but it disappeared in an instant. She just remembered that the resentment in the dust was almost soaring, to the point where it made her feel a bit uncomfortable. Anger has always been the natural enemy of judges, which is why they wash away their grievances and write down their merits in the record of justice. And Lin Qiji closed her eyes. The resentment here was so great that she didn't even recognize it at first. Cui Ju's expression remained unchanged. She lowered her eyes slightly and looked at Lin Qiji, who had a serious expression. Her expression was somewhat complicated, and she thought for a moment, what should I do? Accounts need to be calculated one by one, and grievances naturally need to be washed away slowly. Everything must be done step by step. And the injustice here, Lin Qichen felt for a moment, it was almost not one or two people, so the matter became very tricky. She is a judge who can naturally put those people directly into the 18 layers of hell. They have too much resentment, so there is no problem with it. But she doesn't want to do this. End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10. Madness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Madness. In Lin Qiji's lazy and indifferent eyes, he now caught a hint of seriousness, almost pausing every word. Just find the offering, he said. People don't need such resentment, they are naturally those dirty and unbearable things, using such things as nourishment. Cui Ju took a step back, widened the distance between the two, and asked indifferently, do you have a plan? Although using interrogative sentences, the tone is calm. On Lin Qichen's fair and delicate little face, a thoughtful expression appeared. After a few seconds of silence, he slowly nodded. She could clearly feel that the village cadre was full of interest in her, as if she was eager to kill herself. Since that's the case, just use yourself as bait to expose the dirt behind them one by one. It seemed to sense Lin Qiji's meaning, and Cui Ju gave a faint glance. She had no emotional fluctuations and looked extremely calm, but contained disapproval. I'll lead it out, you're responsible for destroying it, just the barrier, Lin Qichen said on his own, as if he hadn't seen it. Cui Ju was simply laughed at in anger. She really didn't listen at all. Why not just break her leg and lock it up forever? Thinking this way, my eyes narrowed slightly into a dangerous curve, and my breath became incredibly cold. Lin Qichen frowned. She couldn't figure it out why Cui Ju was angry again, it was simply inexplicable. She was extremely confused for a moment. Cui Ju saw that Lin Qiji was completely unaware of why he was angry, and his face turned completely black. He opened his mouth and was about to say something. Unfortunately, before they could say anything, the village officials who had gone back and forth came back, waving their arms as they ran over and stopped in front of them. I just went to ask, but after Li Sheng came back, he didn't contact them. He said he went to the nearest clinic. He said. Cui Ju's face was cold and solemn, with a fierce aura. At first glance, she was in a bad mood. After the village officials glanced at her, they quietly distanced themselves. Do you know the location of the clinic? Take us over. Lin Qichen nodded expressionlessly and continued, speaking in the words of the village cadre. Where does the village cadre have any reason to disagree? He immediately nodded and said, I know. I'll take you over now. Cui Ju held her breath in her heart, feeling very uncomfortable. In the end, she could only sigh helplessly and chose to compromise. The dirty things here seem to have great abilities and have absorbed a lot of resentment. Lin Qiji has just inherited the judge, so dealing with them is still very difficult. The village cadres led the way in front, and Lin Qichen followed behind. The atmosphere around him changed from lazy and casual to a bit serious and vigilant. As he walked further down, Lin Qichen could clearly feel that the chill in the surrounding air was becoming more and more pronounced, constantly deepening. If we infer based on the degree of deepening coldness, this place is getting closer and closer to the place with the heaviest resentment. The village cadres also unconsciously began to quicken their pace, and just looking at his back, they could feel some kind of excitement. "Is anyone there?" The village cadre stopped at a doorway, pounding the tightly closed door with great force, causing quite a commotion. If it were normal, he naturally wouldn't dare to knock on the door like this. However, today he discovered Lin Qichen and was extremely excited. He wanted to quickly offer it, but couldn't control it. The sound of his knocking on the door caused a lot of noise, but there was no intention inside. The door was still tightly closed, with the intention of opening it. He was about to raise his hand and continue knocking on the door when he heard the woman standing behind her in a lazy and emotionless voice, "Stop knocking." The village cadre's body stiffened slightly as he slowly turned his head to look at Lin Qiji. The woman stood behind him, with no expression on her face, seemingly indifferent. A pair of dark, ink-like eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, and she was quietly staring at him. The expression of the village cadre changed slightly, but soon, the corner of his mouth lifted again, squeezing out a less sincere smile. "The doctor must be at home. I'll help you tap a few times, maybe you'll hear me." As soon as he finished speaking, he wanted to turn around and continue knocking on the door. With both hands, he grabbed his neck and casually threw him aside like throwing a cloth. When he realized it, he was already sitting on the ground, with a sharp pain in his neck that felt like he was about to be twisted. He saw Lin Qichen throw him away and take a step forward towards the tightly closed door, but he kicked fiercely without any mercy. The door, which had been tightly closed and seemed as though Kong was not bad, shook twice under her fierce foot and was about to be opened. The village cadres watched this scene and unconsciously opened their mouths, unable to believe what they had seen. In his heart, there was no way to break into that eerie house except to open it voluntarily. But now, with just one kick from Lin Qichen, he could make it shake twice, which surprised and frightened him. He sat on the ground, covered in dust. The huge turmoil in his heart made him unconsciously crawl back 2 steps, curling his feet together. His turbid eyes were filled with panic, but he couldn't leave Lin Qichen. Bang! A huge commotion rang out, and Lin Qichen, with a cold and pretty face, kicked the door open smoothly. The dilapidated door moved twice, and a chill came from inside. Lin Qichen felt a pair of extremely cold hands caressing his neck, as if there were no signs, with a strange and terrifying feeling. Lin Qiji frowned. This dirty thing hid in the room and couldn't come out, but she couldn't enter for a moment and could only stand silently at the door, confronting each other. The old man sitting paralyzed on the ground beside him stared blankly, afraid to blink for fear of having an illusion. As he watched, he suddenly felt something was wrong. The man who followed silently disappeared without a trace. He dared not make any big moves and could only quickly look around with his eyes, but still couldn't find any trace of Cui Ju, as if he had suddenly disappeared. He wanted to remind the things in the room, but opened his mouth before making a sound. Lin Qichen's gaze came over, calm and natural, but it made him instantly mute and unable to say a word. How could this young woman have such a terrifying aura that made him feel a bit hairy for a moment? He instinctively lowered his head and didn't look at Lin Qiji. Lin Qichen felt the coldness behind him for 2 seconds, and a hint of impatience flashed in his eyes. He raised his hand directly, and the coldness disappeared like receding seawater in an instant. Lin Qichen noticed the disappearance of coldness and walked slowly to the old man, slightly lowering his eyelids. "Take it easy," he said, "otherwise, you will die." End of this chapter.